Hi, and welcome to your My Free Acting class lesson for Friday, July the 31st, 2020. I am Michael Bean. Today, our guest is producer Tina Pehme. Pehme, am I pronouncing it wrong?
I just go with Pem. It makes it simple.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm going to show you her website and I'm going to show you her IMDb bio. I'm going to give you the like extremely short, sort of like 45-second rundown of like where the producer is on the chain of events. They're at the top, just so you know. And then we're going to start asking the questions about life. So maybe actually I'll start with the like quick rundown. Those of you who've seen this before are like, know all sorts of extra detail, but like the very simple version of the actor's food chain is the producer, and there's usually more than one. The bigger the budget, the more producers there are, and the sort of more complex the co-production. So I've heard of projects where there's like 11 or 15. Sometimes, which it just seems like crazy. We can ask Tina about that if we want. So the producer is in charge of the money, which means that they get the final decision on who gets cast, and they're actually like running the show and hiring all of the other people who do all of the other jobs. So they're juggling like all the hats. The director is in charge of the story. The casting director is just in charge of the auditions. They're running the auditions and deciding who gets to audition, but they're not deciding who gets cast. The director is influencing and sometimes helping decide, and then ultimately producers are deciding who gets cast. The talent agents are responsible for marketing the actors, specifically, to the casting directors. So they're like, see my actors, they're amazing, you should really see my actors. And the actors are responsible for themselves, making sure that their work is excellent, make sure their talent agents have the information that they need and the materials they need to market them effectively. So there's the like very short version of the food chain for anybody who's watching the video at home and is like, wait, what does a producer do? How do they fit in all this? That's the actor's food chain. And now let's pull up Tina Pehme and Tina Pem and Sepia Films. And here we go, Brave browser. Tina is a creative partner in Sepia Films, committed to making feature films that engage, entertain, and resonate with audiences the world over. For the last 2 decades, Pem has developed projects and relationships internationally through her extensive work on US, Canadian, and international co-productions. Her background in production allows her to bring in details. So I can put this in the chat window so that you can read the whole thing if you want to multitask. You're like, I want to listen to her and read at the same time because like my brain likes that. There it is. Enough to say that she has been doing this for 2 decades, and this is where you can find her list of recent projects, right? So we've got this thing, Cry from the Sea, which it looks like she is in pre-production. Maybe we can ask her about that. Winter Princess, Memories of Christmas, TV movie, the TV movie, so we can ask her questions about that directly, but just so you can see some of what she's been up to. And then sepiafilms.com is where you would go to find her production company and details about. Tina's fantastic. I taught her kids a long time ago when I was, God, it must have been like 15 years ago or something when I first started teaching them. And I've even worked as an actor on one of her films in Victoria a number of years ago. So without any further ado, at 3:34, we're going to pass the hat over to Tina. So Tina, what I'm sure you've just done loads of Zoom, but one of if you go into gallery view, you'll see that we've got really like fantastic mixed age group always. We've got so we've got adults, we've got 7-year-olds, we've got like sort of all the way across the board. They all like the straight talk, so you don't have to give the little kid version. We've got some folks like Josh, for instance, or Maddox, who've done a bunch of on-set work, and then we've got some folks who like would love to work on set but haven't done that yet, or just thinking about it for the first time. Just so you kind of know who you're talking to.
Right.
Can you start by talking about what the job of a producer is like what your job actually looks like from the inside? Because I've never been a producer, and so I've only been able to talk about it from the outside.
Sure. I mean, as you said, I think the producer yes, we're responsible for the money, but there's a lot of different kinds of producers. Why you mentioned that sometimes there's 11 to 15 on a movie. That usually means that they brought in something, whether it was star talent, money, something that helped the movie come together. Typically, there's only one or two producers that really kind of are creatively in charge,
Ah,
not all of those people. Because otherwise it would be, it would be really difficult to make
right.
decisions. So typically, with what we do, so we're creative producers. We finance our films. We hire the director. We vet the script. So usually, like, we'll either option a book, or somebody will submit a script, or we come up with a concept or idea. We work in all genres. Actually, we just like to go with stories that are good stories, that are good characters. We're really about connecting audiences with characters and people. So a lot of our films, even though, like, we have horror, we have period drama, we have TV movies, we have documentaries, it's really all about how can we connect people with characters and share stories that resonate on a global level. So that's kind of our MO. And as I mentioned, we get submissions from lots of different places. And I guess what I would say is, just like, as a producer, what I do is find the story, find the director, come up with the financing or the model that we need to do it in, which is, whether it's a TV movie or whether it's a feature film. We have a number of different kinds of projects in development right now. We have some kids shows, like we have Dead Kids Detective Agency, for example, is a 10-part kids series that's been developed from a book that we're in development. Means that you're actually in the process of writing the scripts. In the case of a series, it's a Bible, which kind of tells you the whole overview of what is going to happen in the first series, what they call arc, and then usually for up to 5 arcs. And then it's our job to take it to different broadcasters around the world and piece together the financing and where it will ultimately end up. And as an actor, I think how this affects you is, depending on what network it's for, the type of performance that's required is different. So, like, if you're doing something for Disney, it's obviously a little bit larger than life. It's much more like theater acting in some ways. Whereas if you're doing a feature film and independent, it's much more raw and grounded and gritty. So it's really important when you go out for an audition to know what you're going out for. That's what we look for when we're watching someone's audition. And if I'm in the room, I'll give you that note. But those are the things you want to pay attention to, is like when you would get something that comes in, is it is it Disney Channel, or is it, an independent from the UK or something like that? Because that will tell you tone. And that also is what we look at when we're developing a project. It's like, okay, so we have an Irish period feature right now that is set in 1926. So the acting style, the different people that we approach for it, and everything that we're doing for it kind of is directed in that way. So, that's how we sort of develop things, is looking at, first of all, is there an audience for it? Who is this audience? And then take it to the appropriate distributor or broadcaster. And then it kind of funnels down. If we actually get the financing together, and I would say that maybe we're pretty lucky that, like, I would say that we don't take on very many films. So we have a pretty good record of from development into actually making things, but there's a lot of things that get developed and don't get made. So I don't know if that's what you want to know, if there's more.
Well, that's great. So it sounds like that building and maintaining that relationship with the distributor or the broadcaster is something that's really important, for you and your job. Is that accurate?
Yes, super, super essential. And it's also about being kind of flexible. And the same thing for actors, is that the model Disney Plus, all those are actually now kind of taking over and getting more traction. So yes, so you want to stay on top of that as a producer as well. And I would say in any part of the industry, you definitely want to stay on top of what the trends are and keeping relationships going as much as possible.
And so, in terms of your interaction with actors, when you are, back when you were seeing actors in the room, and that was still a thing that
Yeah.
people did, or now, when you are looking at tapes,
Mhm.
can you talk a little bit about, what you're looking for? You said that style, and actors who understand the style or the network, is one thing that's important to you. Can you talk about anything else that stands out for you when you're watching an actor, or that you're actively looking for, just so we understand your decision-making process a little bit?
Well, again, I think it depends. And if you're in a room, it makes a big deal of difference because you're able to give notes. I think the most important things are being really prepared, knowing the material inside and out so that you'll be able to make changes based on what you're given. So like, for example, if you have a particular take on a character, going in and doing it. And then if I was to say, could you try this? You could try that. You're not so stuck in the way that you're seeing it that you're able to adapt to direction, because that's one of the things that we look for is people that can take direction. And to also not be afraid to ask any questions if you're not clear on what that direction is. So like if you've got a really big audition, for example, your agent sends you the sides, it's pertinent to ask them if you're not clear on something, like, and they can always call the producers or the casting director just to make sure that you're interpreting right, because sometimes that happens, that you'll go in and you're not really sure. And then what I'd also say is, if it's something like that, is to prepare like 2 ways of doing it, so that you can ask them like what, because you probably won't get that direct feedback. You'll get something on a piece of paper that says you're supposed to do this and this is who this character is. You probably won't have read the script. So sometimes it's nice to just have a different option, and you can go in and say, okay, this is my take. And, they might say, well, actually, this is what it is. And so to be, just being able to have a different way of doing it and to take notes, I think is really important. And also to be, when I say be prepared, it's like to be off book. Years ago, it didn't matter so much. And certainly if you've got an audition that you got like 2 hours before, it's understandable, but everybody today pretty well is off book. And what I mean by that is that they know their lines, they know their character, they know where they're supposed to be in the scene. So all of the things that you need to imagine to give you the confidence to be in that scene is work that you should be doing before you get into that room. And, what often happens is there's a particular type we have in mind, or an idea that we have. And sometimes somebody can come in and they're just so good and so natural and prepared that it can sway what we're doing. So, even if you go in for a role and it says you need to be 10 and you're 14, sometimes that can change things, and it's always worth going into the room if you can get into the room, I think. People get to see what you can do. But yeah, being prepared and being confident in that. Like, I don't mean overly confident, but I just mean enough that you're in the room and you feel good in the room. So I think that, certainly the classes that Michael gives, you've got a lot of audition on camera kind of classes, and being comfortable with that, like knowing what your marks are, knowing where to look, knowing where to speak when you're giving an audition, like, so somebody's eye line is in the appropriate place. All of those things are important.
Is there an audition story, that's like just something that stands out in memory? You said that sometimes an actor can come in and just give a performance, that's so right for them or for the character, that it shifts your idea of the script, or that it really stands out. I mean, but if there's one that stands out as a concrete example, I think that would be useful.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. There's so many, but I
Of
can't.
course.
There's lots of little ones. Like, there was a guy that came in last year that was supposed to be like a 6-foot handsome prince type. It was for like a fantasy kind of movie. And he ended up being, like 5 foot nothing, but he was so his take on it, he did it with a British accent. He did it with such a plum. We just changed the way that we wanted to see that character, because it created a lightness that we didn't know we needed within the whole script. So that was a really fun experience, that kind of thing. I'm just trying to think of others. I mean, there's been many examples where we thought that we wanted a particular type of person, and then we've just seen somebody and they're like, this is the really, they've either had like a really interesting natural quality. And I say that's really what it is. It's like when someone just embodies a role and they really just feel it, they transcend what acting is. And I think that was, when you're really doing great work, that's what you forget, that it's that person. So that's, I think those kinds of stories, I've got a lot of those where it's just that I had a particular opinion and it changed just by somebody being just really, really owning it in a really cool way.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I think especially it's easy for actors, but especially for newer actors, to think that they have to read minds, and figure out exactly what the producers or the directors, the casting director want and fit that. And so hearing your stories is a perfect balm, for that. Now, in terms of understanding style, one of the things that I will say when I'm breaking down scripts, or I've been saying in these lessons a lot, that I haven't had a chance to ask a producer, is that if it's a project that where there aren't existing episodes to look at. That because the director is typically hired to oversee the story, one of the things that can be helpful is to go look up the last film the director did or the last several films the producer did and watch little clips of the trailer on YouTube, just to sort of get an aggregate sense of this is probably the style we're working in. Like it's better than nothing when guessing style. Does that feel like good advice to you, or is there something that you would offer instead?
Well, I would say if it's in a similar genre, that's true.
Yes.
There's people that do, like, for example, if we were auditioning for one of our period features and you looked at one of our TV movies, it would be radically different.
Right, of course.
So you would hopefully have enough information on your breakdown that tells you what it is so that you could look at, yes, agreed, if you're looking at a similar genre or type of piece. Yes. For that. When I say genre, I mean, is it TV? Is it is it episodic? Is it 30 minutes? Is it a 2-hour feature? And then pick some samples of that person's work, because there is people that tend to have a particular style. But I also think in general genre, like feature film is definitely understated. I'd say screen acting is a lot more understated, and people tend to, I think when they're younger, tend to try to do that whole Disney thing where they're really bigger. Mm-hmm. And that, unless it is Disney, is not necessarily what we want to see. We want to see natural things. But that said, I think that one thing that I've always noticed, and this is something that, is getting better on the Canadian side, is when I'm auditioning in somewhere like LA, everybody comes with a lot of energy. Like it's just that sort of the culture. I think it's different, whereas Canadians tend to be more restrained. So it's a fine balance between being overly confident. That's what I was trying to say earlier, but you need to bring energy to it as well. Like not to be so low key that like it's natural, but bring an energy to your work so they can hear you, project your voice, look at people. That's important.
Thank you. That's super helpful. Now, just before we open it up to questions from the group, can you talk a little bit about what it's like producing during COVID, what the considerations are, or like sort of how that's changing how you're thinking about hiring actors and being on set?
Well, it's actually really interesting. We're doing a film in Australia right now. Our director and my producing partner are over there, and they just got released from 2 weeks of quarantine in a city hotel room that had no opening windows. So they were literally climbing the walls. But we've cast the whole movie on tape, and as everyone is doing now. Which has been, again, an interesting experience. There's so much more. I think you're going to see a lot more of that even when things open up. Mm-hmm. So the importance of actually having a good place to tape, a good setup if it's at home, which most people will be doing, like decent lighting, plain white or other color wall, good acoustics, like nobody interrupting you, just creating a professional environment for your self-tapes are really important because that, this is what we're seeing. We're going to be seeing a lot of different people, and sometimes some people are really disheveled and they don't feel like, so the more professional you can make whatever you're doing, even if you're 7 or if you're at home and, there's a dog barking in the other room, like just, as far as I know, there's nothing else going on. You're doing this is your profession. And I would say that the downside to it is that it's like anything. You're not in the room, so you're not able to give somebody a note. And so what we're finding is that, there's a lot of people that are not necessarily getting an opportunity because their take on it may not be right. And so we're going through, 20 or 30 tapes on a roll. And if somebody doesn't get it right away, that we may move on. And I think that, so what's really important, I think, is paying attention, especially in the early scenes, to just give your best, give all the energy to it that you can, even though you won't have somebody giving you that kind of feedback. Mm. And then also the same thing as I said, offering another take or another version.
So you do like to see multiple takes on the scene in a self-tape?
I do, but it depends on the size of the scene. If it's 11 pages, and you'll get different viewpoints on that. Like if somebody's doing episodic, no. But if it's a feature film and it's a big audition, like, you can talk to your agent and ask, and this is going to be a split decision. Personally, I like to know what someone can do. And if I can't see anything, like I'll go and look at stuff that you've done before. And if you don't have anything you've done before, then I think it's appropriate. It's also something you should always ask, but yeah, for me, I if I have nothing to weigh it against, and if somebody, like, it's important to have some sort of, if you don't have a reel and you don't have a lot of things to show, is to be able to show you that you have some versatility. So I would encourage that myself.
Thank you. Okay, let's do, hands just to make life easy. If you have questions, you can either in the participants window, remember this little like raise hand button, and then there's like a little blue hand that appears, and then you don't have to like wave your arm around. If you've got a question for Tina, please throw up a hand because we'd love to hear your questions. What do you want to know now that we've got a real live producer? Yeah, Elaine, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Hi, Elaine.
Hi. So I'd like to know, how do you choose a project that you want to work on? It's based on a genre, or it's based on what grabs your attention when you want to work on a project? You as a producer.
It really, for me, it has to be something that really speaks to me. Like, whether it's like, I love really good characters, and I like, just things that feel grounded in reality and that have a real emotional turn that we kind of are moved by and can, grow with in some way, even if it's a horror movie, or if it's, a period piece, or even if it's just a fluffy TV show that the characters are really good. So I look for good characters and really good writing. But how I decide on a project is also based on whether we think we can actually get it made. So, I may love a drama, but dramas are very difficult to make right now. So, straight up drama, unless it's a book that I've loved, for 10 years and I've wanted to make it, is probably not something. So it's kind of things that you love as well as practicality. So is there a market? Who's the audience? Will people see this movie if we make it? So it's kind of a combination of those things.
Thank you.
Does that help, or is that okay?
Other more questions? Who else has got a question for Tina? Because I can just keep asking questions, but there we go. Great. Eve, go ahead, jump in.
Besides skill and confidence, what do you feel is the most important thing for an actor to have to book roles?
I think being really, well, as I said, confidence and being prepared. But I also think that practicing, training, I think it's kind of a really good toolkit of being able to respond quickly, but also to be able to, it's like if you're a basketball player, you're going to practice basketball. I think somebody that is well-trained enough so that they can be natural, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Because there's I've also seen people that are overcoached and they think it's a particular way. They worked with somebody on a role and then they come in and they can't get their head around doing it a different way. We're like, try this. So it's like having enough confidence, knowing your own toolbox and developing parts of yourself that aren't like you at all. And the other thing I would say is really important is trying to get past being self-conscious, because I think that's really, like when you see these great performances, that person has transformed. They go beyond their level of comfort. So if something scares you or makes you uncomfortable, that's really where you want to jump in. Have some fun with it. I mean, to me, if I were an actor, that's actually what I'd want to be doing, is push yourself into those places and really gain confidence, hone your skills, and practice monologues, do stuff that's not even in class, like read scripts that are, very different than who you are. Because there's a lot of people that come in and they're just good at being who they are. And sometimes they have a career being who they are. But then you look at the really amazing actors that just transform. And I feel like that's what they are able to bring to it, is they go out of their comfort zone and really jump into being someone other than themselves. And that takes practice.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Questions? While folks are thinking of good questions, Tina, I know that both of your children, were engaged in acting, at one point or another. Based on that experience, not just as a producer, but as a parent, and to supporting young actors, is there any particular advice that you would give to young actors?
Well, I think the biggest one is not to take things personally. It's really hard not to. If you know that you've done a really good audition, it's a lot of the time there's so many factors that are the reason that we choose someone. It might be especially if you're a kid, because it might be who's playing your parents. It might be because there's a mandate that we have to have a certain level of diversity. It might be like there's a lot of factors that create that decision. So sometimes it's not even the best performance. It's the right performance for all of the sum of the parts, because movies are so many different parts. So it's not it's not getting discouraged. Like, it's hard if you're really, especially if you call back a few times or you have a chem test and you're really close and you know that you could get there, but sometimes that's what it is. And usually it is what it is, but no experience is ever wasted. So it's just really finding a way to understand that it's a professional decision. And, and I think that's one of the greatest challenges about being an actor is that you want to be able to access all this stuff inside. So you need to be vulnerable. You need to be able to, to let out and access these emotions. And at the same time, you have to be kind of, I don't want to say hardened, but you do need to come up with a boundary so that it isn't a personal, rejection, because it isn't. It's solely a job like anything else, like going to a job interview and they pick somebody else because that person was what they were looking for a particular reason. But I also would say that the other thing is to try to get feedback. And it's hard because, like, especially right now, people are very harried. There's a lot of stress. But, even if you can ask your agent or just look at your tapes and see what you could have done differently, I think everyone has a pretty good sense of, when they ace something and when they don't. And I think that the biggest one for me, though, is don't take it personally, and also just be able to kind of rally. Resilience is really important, perseverance and resilience in this business, because it's not easy. In terms of, some people luck into it. They'll get a role right away in a big movie and then they don't get one for 2 years. Like some people get, 7 years, they don't get anything. And then all of a sudden they have a career. So it's not, there's so many different things that go into it, but if you love it and it's what you want to do, then I think that's the skill set, perseverance and resilience.
Great. Any last questions? We're coming up near the end of our time. And like I said, I can keep asking the questions.
It's a really great time, though. I mean, if people want to be in the acting world, especially in Vancouver, there's going to be opportunities. And, they're not going to be shooting very much in the US. So more will be coming up here, and there's going to be more opportunities for all ages. So, I would just say keep working at it. And you're going to find that there is a demand. And if you can get yourself out there, don't try once or twice, like really do persevere. And it is the people that kind of keep coming back. And then, casting directors get to know you, directors get to know you. You may not get that role, but they're like, oh yeah, what's her name? She did a great job in this. And they'll bring you back. So it really is kind of just plugging away and building relationships.
I can definitely echo both of those things that Tina said, that I've seen people have work a lot and then not at all for years, and vice versa. That it can be really inconsistent, and that the relationships are super important. I have a small practical question. The thing that you cast in Australia, you said you cast entirely from tapes. What did callback tapes look like? Did you give extensive notes and then ask for a second tape, or?
Yeah, we gave notes, and in some cases the director did Zooms.
Okay.
We're actually in the process of doing that today, because the movie doesn't start shooting until August 17th, and we have to cast a very young girl who's like 5. And the first set of tapes, we thought we had the right person. We were down to 2, and then we ended up bringing 4 people back, and 3 of them couldn't do it again just because they were so young.
Yeah.
And so in that case, he's like, no, I can't just give notes. I have to see, if this person is going to be able to maintain. And that does happen when you're under like maybe 10 or 12, that we need to know, it's not just the acting side of it. It's like, the whole, like, being old enough to handle being on set and all of the things that are around it. And as for the other roles, we basically did the callbacks in the same way. I don't think we did any Zooms for any of the adult roles, but we did give notes, and yeah.
Thanks. Caden, thanks for waiting. Did you have a question?
What kind of personality do you need for scenes?
What kind of personality you need for scenes? Is that what you asked?
That's what he asked, yeah.
What kind of scenes do you need for a personality?
Okay, so I think what you mean is, like, is there a personality that people are looking for certain scenes?
Like yelling, screaming.
Okay. Well, I guess what you're asking is that when there's a scene, what personality should you have? Is that kind of it? I think I just want to make sure I'm answering your question. Is that it?
Yep.
Yeah, got it. Okay, so that's where I was talking a little earlier about finding out exactly what it is you're auditioning for. And as Michael said, you know, if you don't have like episodes of something you can watch, then look at the director's work, look at the producer's work, read what it says about, you know, it'll say, you know, the age of the character, what that character's background is. And sometimes they'll send you a script so you can get a sense of what the personality of that character is. They usually tell you though, like the kind of personality they're looking for that particular piece. So it usually comes in the breakdown.
And that's such a fantastic, you know, kind of like innocent question, Caden, because I think that it's something that, you know, is underneath several layers of sophistication for a lot of actors, you know, where like at the baseline, they feel like maybe there's something that they should be as a person, as opposed to this is a skill and you're telling a story and you have options.
Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, just make sure, you know, that you're hearing Tina's advice from the place of like, there is no one personality that you should have. You
In
know,
terms
and
of being an actor and going into a room.
of course.
Yeah, it isn't. I mean, I would say that if somebody's super shy and looks at the ground, it might make us a little nervous about how they would perform. You know, you should be able to meet people and look them in the eye and ask questions and be comfortable. But it's, you know, I think we all understand too that it can be a pretty nerve-wracking thing to go into a room where there's a bunch of people. I would say that with your age especially, it's just important to be like confident, polite, and prepared. And that's really it. You don't need to be like overly bubbly or, you know, telling jokes or anything like that.
Okay, it's 4:01. Deborah, Tina, do you have time for another quick question?
Sure.
Great, Deborah, go ahead. Remember, you have to unmute yourself.
Hi there, Tina. How are you?
Hi. Good. How are you?
Good. I'm asking a question about, there was a movie script written about my life in 2000 area around there, because my children had been abducted overseas and it was a 12-year battle, and there was a lot of interesting things that came through it, but there were some things that came through it that could have hurt some
Deborah, are
people.
you pitching your script? Because if you're pitching your script, I'm going to cut you off.
No. I'm not pitching the script. I'm just saying that the reason I didn't let it be finished was somebody could have been hurt through it. So is there, yeah. So do you think that's something that I should pursue another time? I'm not pitching my script.
Okay.
I'm just asking.
The story is strong. You know, if you feel strongly about it, then sure, absolutely. I mean, and if you're worried about people getting hurt, you can just change the names and some of the events. And, whatever doesn't directly hurt somebody, really. Like there's a lot of inspired by true event stories that are actually quite far away from what actually happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, that gives me something to think about. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's wrap it up there. Tina, thank you so much for making the time to talk to us today. You know,
my pleasure. I hope everyone loves acting, and you know, Michael's a great teacher, and yeah, keep it up.
Everybody unmute yourselves and say bye.
Thank
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.